Welcome back, South Philly Sauce and Audacy Original, brought to you by 94 WIP and Jack Daniels. Ashlyn, Sullivan, Al Morganti here with you, getting ready for the Flyers' last preseason game, which means the regular season right around the corner. It is officially hockey season, but also Red October as well. This is one of the coolest times, I think, to be in Philadelphia, Al, because there's so much going on right now, so much excitement for each team except the Eagles. They might get back to where they need to be, but probably not. But pretty cool that you have all this going on at the same time.
That's pretty cool. I'm wondering if we won't see some Flyers at the at the bank to go to the games. I know they were there at the playoffs last year. At least management and some players were there. I think Tippett was there. So I'm wondering if maybe Michkov doesn't make an appearance at a postseason baseball game, because it's been so exciting. But you're right, it's a great time of year. And I noticed on X, so with all the social media that's going on, that we're going to have a Michkov exclusive.
We are. Yes, I'm very excited.
Yeah, I saw you on the top of the Art Museum steps there with three Russians, right? 3 Russians,
yeah. I'm not going to lie, that's the hardest interview I've ever done. It was a tough assignment. Called 3 of them. Yegor Zamula served as the interpreter for the interview, and obviously he is not a professional interpreter. He's doing his best. So you'll see in the interview, which will be opening night on NBC, that there are a lot of funny moments. For example, I'm almost positive that by the end of the interview, I would ask Michkov a question. Z would have to translate it, but then I would see Michkov laugh and smirk. So I'm almost positive that Yegor Zamula wasn't asking Michkov the actual questions I was asking. So if anyone has Google Translate, I want to know what he was asking him, because it wasn't the questions I was asking.
Yeah, but what's really interesting to me is, and I know some people think it's a cliche when you say you've got a good room or whatever, but I mean, you go between teams, Eagles, even Phillies, you do, and the Flyers. But I'm telling you, and people will tell me, oh, you're just being soft on the team or whatever. It's camp. I said, no, I'm telling you, I've covered a lot of teams over a lot of years. It's a really cool locker room, and when you've got a guy coming in like this, and you've got 3, literally, I mean, this is a city of Rocky, right? 3 Russians at the Art Museum, all having a blast, talking about how happy they are to be in Philadelphia. I got to think that it's not just me looking at this through any kind of orange glasses, and I've been criticized being too critical sometimes. But I got to think, I mean, you've been there with the different organizations here in the city, that it really is a little bit different there with the Flyers.
It really is. And I said it on WIP this week on my radio shifts, and I got called out for saying, oh, well, that's just hockey. And, when you go into the Flyers, and I was talking about the biggest difference, and not that it's a negative towards the Eagles. I think it's more positive towards the Flyers, but a lot of days I'll go from Flyers practice to Eagles practice, and it's a night and day difference. The vibe, the way they treat you, it's just different. And people say, well, that's just the difference between the NFL and hockey. But I don't think that's the case. I think, you've been in plenty of hockey rooms as well that aren't as strong.
Yeah, this is really, it's unique, especially with Tortorella there. That, because he runs a tough camp. And you would think of any time if it's getting grading on guys, it'd be during training camp or whatever. But it hasn't been. And we'll see what happens as they go on. And I think, Ashlyn, that's why you want the energy of young players coming up, or new players, not even just young. That's why trades in the NHL, trades are made at the end of the year. There's something to that new energy that a new player, especially a new young player, brings to get everybody going, as long as it's accepted, as long as he doesn't come in and think I'm the show or whatever. And yeah. I think it's been pretty comfortable and pretty cool. I'm frankly stunned at how easily he's kind of folded into this here. And the whole team has kind of folded into this, that it's been like, okay, that's pretty cool. There's no jealousies that you can see. And I'm a little concerned about ramping up expectations, but darn, I watch the games. I can't say pump the brakes.
Yeah. No, and I think let's get to that topic. It's one of our topics today is controlling the mania, the Michkov Mania. And I know John Tortorella is really trying to do that. I mean, he has told us in press conferences, for example, that we are not getting him every single game. And for example, like I'd love to talk to Michkov in game broadcast intermissions. I know that's not a possibility, one with the language barrier. And two, they just don't want to put too much on his plate. And I get why, where he was great in our interview on the Rocky Steps and you can tell he's having fun. And I think he talks a lot about how helpful it is to have his family here. And they were talking about how Michkov's mom cooks for them all the time. And Ivan Fedotov's wife is there and it's Zamula. And it's like this little family they have together. And Z was talking about how he never had that before Michkov coming over here. So it's really helping everyone that they have this group of comfortability together. But I think I'm very curious, and I think it's going to be hard for Jonesy, Briere, Torts, that Michkov wants to do more. You can tell that he's really comfortable. You can tell that he's pushing, that he wants to just be one of the guys. And I think it's going to be hard for management to have that balance of when do you allow him to do stuff and when is it going to be too much?
Yeah, and Ashlyn, what's going to be a problem, it's going to be touchy, is we do a lot of games. So, we get all different players. But they've got some national games early. And that's where, ESPN, Hulu, Hockey Night, whatever. I mean, there's a storyline there. And it's very difficult for a team to kind of put limits when the league wants the attention. And this kid's a terrific story. And he wants to do it. And this is where I think it's going to be I wouldn't want to be in the PR department for this when all of this goes on, because he is so likable and just willing to do things. And I know that, as you mentioned, they just can't do everything. It's just, especially early in a year, when you go in, they're going to go all west and at least one national game in that process there. But even beyond that, the locals, I mean, we're in Canada. So, I mean, that's even bigger when you go in there to see what goes on. So I think that's gonna have to be a kind of a interesting kind of dynamic on what goes on with Tortorella and how much he can do or whatever. But I mean, if this kid comes out of the gates and scores a few goals in the first couple of games, it's going to be like, whoa, he's going to everybody's going to want a piece of him. And I think they're going to have a job to do to kind of spread it all out evenly.
Yeah, I think it's going to have to be where they start and state expectations early on, because you even use the example from the preseason games. I mean, Michkov scoring his first goal at the Wells Fargo Center. He scores in overtime. He's banging the glass, and it's preseason. And it's like that was one of the cooler moments we've seen in a preseason element. And you think, oh, you'll definitely hear from him post-game, and you don't. And it's like, it's already starting where it's like, what do you do in this situation where he's obviously the story? Everyone wants to talk to him, but John Tortorella was honest with us. You're not getting him every game. So that's like, I mean, he warned us it was happening, but I see, especially if it keeps up. And I think that's the narrative is it going to keep up to this speed when he's seeing actual NHL defenses? I guess preseason.
Yeah,
but
that'll be a test. I mean, obviously size of the players going on. And in addition, you also have, when you get attention like this, the other side wants to shut you down. So it's like,
they're going after them.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. That's why, you're going to have, Delorier is going to be a big part of what's going on. It's like Couturier getting a fight over this.
So, I mean, that was awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome. And that's what's going to happen. So we're going to be taxed to do stories around like opening night. Finally, when they finally get home against Washington, I guess it is.
The worst.
Yeah, you got Ovechkin coming in. Ovechkin, I know when Svechnikov, another Russian, first came up, he tried to throw hands with Ovechkin and almost got killed in that first game. But this is going to – so we'll have to, work around. I think, game one, when they come home, we send somebody out to count all the Michkov jerseys. How many are in the stands? Because it'll be alarming. But it's fun. And I know when the Bruins came in over the weekend, I went down there and talking to the Boston media that was there. That's all they were asking about was him coming in. And just, the whole team expectations, the goalie situation, what's going on, especially with the, they're trying to, do you think Swayman could end up in Philadelphia? I'm like, I don't think that they're ready to make moves here right now. But that was all the question. Yeah, not at some point, but not right now.
Yeah, I think that the Michkov jersey thing, especially, I had a buddy that went to the preseason game, last home game, and he scores the goal. And what my buddy was saying, like, okay, if he scores a goal when I see it, I'm committing and I'm buying the jersey. And sure enough, he scores the goal. So he goes around the Wells Fargo Center and tries to buy a jersey. And they're sold out. You can't get them, at least in person. It's like they're pushing him to try to buy it online. But the pro shop in preseason is already sold out of these jerseys, which is, it's pretty cool. It's what they, and I think it's been so refreshing. I think everyone was so worried. Was Torts going to pull this guy back? Was he going to, bench him or say that he has to have more defensive structure? And when Torts said in his press conference, we've been waiting years for a guy like this. It's like, yes, I love that honesty because we're all thinking it. And for the head coach to say it was huge.
Yeah. And there'll be periods of time where, he's had to coach Konechny, right? And Konechny's a terrific offensive talent who does some things that drive you crazy as a coach, but he lets him go for the most part. There's been a couple of times he's really had to kind of pull him back into the bench. But for the most part, it's like we need it. And when you have the coach saying we really needed that, look, this team needs goals. It needs skill. It's the key to the power play. So I don't think there's going to be much in terms of pushback from Tortorella. I don't even think if the kid tries a Michigan, if it's at a proper time in the game, that the coach will go nuts. And I think he'd be praying that it doesn't go in when he scores the Michigan, at least the first one.
For a teaching moment, yeah. And we got to talk about, I thought it was one of the cooler things I've seen covering the Flyers was when Coots went after them when he was messing with Michkov. And I got him for that intermission interview, and he was saying how they're not going to mess with him like that. I just thought, Coots, you talk a lot about what kind of leader he is, and I think there's been some hesitation of why is he captain, and he's not the rah-rah guy in the room, but that was such a captain moment that needed to happen, and you saw Lawton and TK on the bench, stick taps, laughing that he did that. Like, that was a massive moment for the season, I thought.
Yeah, it just shows you everything that they're expecting and the leadership that they have, and it's still a part of hockey. Where I know there's a school of people that don't like that type of thing. But, I think it's what separates the sport from other sports, that you can absolutely do something like that. And it's not even added value, it's value you can do things like that. And it brings a team together. We've seen, there's been chaos in the preseason with Montreal, Ottawa. It's been chaotic on what's gone on. And you absolutely have to buy that. You have to buy that extra space for your star player. But your star player can't do stupid things to get you involved in that and get you, because it is not easy. Much as it looks like, okay, it's just part of the game. Anybody that's been through it, that is not fun throwing hands. In addition, just maybe getting hurt. It is exhausting to do that. And you can't ring that bell too many times as a elite player to get your guys in a position to have to do that too often.
Right. But it seems like Michkov, he wasn't doing anything out of the ordinary. It's just skating and getting picked on. Like, it was clear as day, and they kept going after him. So you're right. The league is taking notice, and that is definitely going to be a thing. Probably the first month of the season is most teams are going to try to go after him.
Yeah, which is why when your power play works and you draw a penalty for doing that, and that's also what gets you left alone. If your power play then rings up a few goals, like, well, if we go after him and then he's still on the ice, we're in big trouble here.
Yeah, very true. And so far, so good. The power play has looked a little better. Granted, it's preseason. We'll see if it carries over. But another major topic in this preseason, I'm so curious how this works out. And everyone you talk to has a different opinion, is should Jet Luchanko make the final team? And when you talk to the guys in the room, I talked to Joel Farabee about it. He believes he's seen enough that he should make it. TK as well. You talk to the coaching staff and they say he's been great in camp, in practice, and skates, but hasn't really shown it as much as they would like in game action. So I really do see both sides, and I'm curious how they decide this.
Yeah, you bring up two sides. There's three sides because there's management and there's contract situations. Now you get a 9-game grace period, I guess you want to call it. Look at them and see maybe that works out. But I find it really hard to believe that you're going to burn a year of his contract status, what you will, to stay up all year. because you don't know what's going to happen later. He's such a young player. Has he been that far and above? I don't know that I've seen it that much, but I mean, I know it's impressive. It's beyond expectations on how he's performed here. But I think it's a lot to ask organizationally to do this. I wouldn't be surprised to get a quick glimpse or preview, but I think they're gonna be cautious with this and not. I'd be stunned if he stayed the year. I just don't see it making organization. When you look at where this team is, that you're better. I think they're better off with what's coming up. You see the young defensemen who haven't developed as quickly as we thought to come along, and maybe you want that wave of players for several years to kind of hit. And I got to think, good as he's been, I can't see that it's a season-long staying here situation.
So you think if the organization was farther along, it
yes.
would be, yeah.
Absolutely. If you're further along and maybe you can, your contract status where you have guys, but I don't think that. It's like when I was talking to the guys from, Boston's got the Swayman situation. Well, would the Flyers be interested in bringing in a veteran goaltender now that they, Carhartt's no longer part of the picture? I'm like, I don't think so. I think when you look at it, Russians, Belarus or whatever you want to call Belarusians, whatever, they've got some guys in their system that they can bring along. I do think that they have some cards to play in terms of trade with goaltenders, because I think in the future that might be a part of what's going to go on here. But I don't think right now you go out and ring the bell, especially when you're paying Fedotov so much money as I assume, backup goaltender.
Right. Yeah, it's fascinating how this will all work out. But the good news, and we couldn't say this a couple years ago, is even if Luchanko does go back down, I mean, look what you have in the pipeline. And this is why we always preach and sound like homers that you should be optimistic about where this Flyers team is at, is that this was not a problem a couple of years ago of whether a guy like this should make it or not.
No, wasn't. And that's where you have the drafting that they've done to kind of make the future look so much better. Now, you tend to overrate your guys. And, I know people are looking in and saying, what about, it would have been nice to have Gauthier here. Well, it would have. But if Drysdale works out, it kind of a wash there, especially if you got a defenseman. But I mean, that was a big hit on a guy that potentially a good offensive player like that. But I do think when you've got kids coming up, I like what I'm told about Bonk and how he's played in juniors to kind of develop as a player. And I think, again, like Luchanko, I think a bit of the future. But we got to see them. And I also think, Ashlyn, it's important that everybody knows every hockey fan in Philly knows their names, knows the guys coming up. And that was missing forever in terms of this bunch of, it was only Carhart. And it was like, okay, we got this coming. But otherwise it was like, and then Gauthier, and then he leaves. Now it's like, got a bunch of kids coming up. They think, you know what, they may be a part of this. And you see that it's not straight upward. York up and down a little bit and then comes up. And you also see, especially with the young defensemen, that's such a hard position. Guys you think might make it, that last step to the NHL is really, really difficult. And that's where those are the guys, and when they come to training camp, they have to impress as defensemen because their mistakes are just devastating. And they get picked upon if, people know their weakness or whatever, or if they can't gap correctly, or if they can't keep up to the speed of a game or read the speed of a game, that shows up. And that's a real tough move for a young defenseman to come up and make a big impression.
Right, especially when they do well in practices or preseason, and then we don't see it in the games. It's hard to make the case for it. But I think probably the biggest success of all, and this is saying something, is that this team is really healthy right now going into the regular season. Especially at the end of last year, so many guys were dealing with things that, frankly, now months removed, were way more serious than we expected. A Coots, a Drysdale, you have a couple of things, block shots, Sealer, Tyson, they're back on the ice, so it's all good. But to go into this year fully healthy is a huge sign.
Yeah, you look around the league, I mean, Doughty, Laine, big names, banged up and gone for the season perhaps. Yeah. And that's, you see it in football a lot with that, that short season the short schedule that they have compared to an NHL or NBA or Major League Baseball season. But that is crucial to get through it healthy. And I'm kind of thinking now they're through. I mean, the last game, I guess, will be mostly because of where the Devils situation. I can't imagine much NHL talents on the ice. But I mean, you managed to get through, and that's huge. It's part luck. I mean, let's face it. You get, especially a Tortorella team where guys that want to make the team go out and block shots or impress will go out and block shots, and that can be dangerous. And that's, to me, that's why you mentioned a couple of guys go through the Boston game, blocking shots, passes, whatever, being able to get through it, because that's where you wonder, boy, is it worth it in a preseason to kind of throw out like that when you've got, see what happened to Sealer last year. Yeah. So that's another good sign that they got through this thing healthy. And the guys that you mentioned that came in after surgeries look like they're well on their way to being fully recovered.
Big time. So definitely a lot of reasons to be excited about this upcoming year. And we've got one more week until the first game, which is next Friday night, the 11th, on the road. Flyers after dark to start the season. We wouldn't have it any other way. And
no, you get to see your interview with the Russians.
Yeah, I hope people watch that, and we'll see if the Phillies need that night. I hope not, because we need people watching this program. It's going to be good stuff, and we can't have a lot of things going on.
We do. It's going to be an exciting season, and I can tell already by the calls and inquiries getting from around the league on the Flyers and the new interest in and then the new era of Flyer hockey is finally here.
Yes, very exciting stuff. Thanks for tuning in to South Philly Sauce, an Audacy original brought to you by 94 WIP. And Jack Daniels, we will see you next week.